It is Sunday, June 29th, right around 5 o'clock p.m. Central Time. My name is Michael Wein, and we are live with Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports. Another episode of Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports. 62 days, and nearly 62 days away, and even less than that, until fall camp opens from the college football season. My name is Michael Wein. Joining me, as always, is the fantastic Emmy Nixon. We are back for another loaded episode of Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports. On today's show, we will be reacting to a top 25 players in the SEC list for this upcoming season by Manny Navarro, a writer for The Athletic. We will be getting into snubs, Texas players on the list, since this is Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports, how quarterbacks are ranked, and it'll serve as kind of our kickoff to preview season as football is fast approaching. And on the back half of today's show, we've got a baseball Q&A for Texas baseball. We've got some burning questions related to the upcoming MLB draft, transfer portal, and roster decisions as we kind of still are wrapping up what happened and absorbing what happened in the first year under Schlossnagle. So it should be a really fun episode. Quick housekeeping note for everybody. I think I can pretty much say it now. I'm fully moved back to Austin from Houston. No longer living in Houston. I'm starting a new job here in Austin on Tuesday. So my setup's a little different. You guys probably have noticed that the last couple episodes. I do have my mic with me, but I kind of have a makeshift setup here. It's going to be a while until I can get my official setup kind of ready to go. But we'll make do until that's ready. It'll be a couple weeks, but as long as I have the mic and can talk and you guys can hear and see me, I don't think it matters all that much. Emmy, what's up, man?
Nothing much. When you sent over this list earlier today, we had originally had a different segment planned, but we're going to get to that segment next week. So stay tuned for that. But when you had pivoted over to this, my first reaction seeing this list was there's a particular player in my head that is not on the list and not on the honorable mentions either that we're going to get into that I think is a pretty big snub.
Yeah, so let's just go ahead and get into this. So this list is by Manny Navarro, who's a college football writer for The Athletic. If you don't have a subscription to The Athletic and you love sports and you have the money where you can afford it, I highly recommend getting a subscription. It's the best sports writing I think you can find out there. And you can kind of, like most sports apps, kind of select what teams and leagues you want specific articles for or specific news for. But they're starting to roll out some college football preview content as we're not actually that far away, like I mentioned. And I think most people would agree. There wasn't one super dominant team in the SEC last year. There were a couple really good teams. Texas and Georgia, I think you can put into that category. Alabama at points in times, although they were, I think, looking back, very, very flawed. On their best days, they could be really good, but they were fatally flawed, as we saw towards the back half of the season, where they lost games to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma, a not very good Oklahoma team. And I think overall, you could kind of say like it was a pretty much relative to the past down year for the SEC. Much better year for the Big Ten in retrospect. But I think this year's going to be a lot better for a multitude of reasons, which is why I'm excited to talk about some of the players on this list. And we'll get into the reasons why. But he starts off this article by just talking about the NFL draft. One of the reasons I still believe the SEC is the best conference in college football is because of what they put into the NFL. This league has recorded 79 players selected just in this past year's NFL draft. In the 2025 draft, 79 players from the SEC were drafted. In a down year for the conference. 14 more than its previous record, most recently in 2021. Almost half of the first round picks. In a down year for the SEC, 15 of the first 32 picks came from the SEC. So even though my entire point on that is, even though it was somewhat of a down year, I think majority would agree for the conference, they still dominate in terms of high-level talent, which is why it's really exciting to get into this list. So, Emmy, since we are deep in the heart of Longhorn sports, let's talk about where they have the Texas players ranked, what your reactions are to that, and then we can get into players that we might think were snubbed from the Longhorns.
Yeah. First guy, the highest player from Texas on this list, Anthony Hill Jr. at number 2. In terms of like where you place guys on the list, to me, it's more about is that player in the particular range that I would view him as? And Anthony Hill, I think if you put him anywhere within the top 7 players in the SEC, I think I would feel pretty comfortable with that. And having him here at number 2, obviously, this writer is very high on Anthony Hill, as he should be. Was probably, if you look at just, he turned on a highlight tape of Anthony Hill last year, like what he is as a college football player right now is like probably, you know, as good of linebacker as you're ever going to get in college football. That's simple as that.
Any other initial thoughts on Texas players ranked before I
Yeah,
get
Colin
into
Simmons
my
at
thoughts?
4, same thing. I think anywhere within like the top 6 guys, I would feel pretty comfortable with that. They have him ahead of Ryan Williams, behind Caden Proctor, so kind of sandwiched between 2 Alabama guys there. I think that's probably fair, given Simmons was only a freshman last year. What he did was obviously a historic freshman season in terms of freshman Texas defensive ends. But if you're looking at a scale of the entire SEC, I think the 4 rank is rare because they're kind of projecting what he'll be in his sophomore year this year. And then the last thing is Arch Manning down at number 16. I honestly, I mean, I get it. I get why he's lower down. Just because they're trying to maybe manage what we've seen versus like what we think he'll be this season. Because it's just been such a small sample size. It's just the reality. Like we don't know how his body will respond to a full SEC schedule, if he'll be able to, if his body will be able to hold up. If, you know, high level statistics will be able to be maintained over an entire year. I feel confident that will happen. And if that does happen, I think he should have been higher.
Yeah, so I 100% agree with Mr. Navarro here on having Anthony Hill Jr. and Colin Simmons both in the top 5. 2 5-star recruits, as talented as they come at their respective positions within college football. When you look at Anthony Hill, he, I believe, is going to be a first-team All-American this upcoming season. I think he will be viewed as long as he doesn't get hurt, the best off-ball linebacker in college football this upcoming season. And I think if he has the season, I think he can, as a first-team All-American, he could be a first-round pick next year. And that's one of the reasons he's slated specifically on this list at number 2. Now, you can quibble with whether or not you want him at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but somewhere within the top 8, he has to be in there. If you look at just what he's done, he spearheads. Well, first of all, he spearheaded one of the best defenses in college football last year, and I think Texas is, again, with what they have coming back, going to be a top 10 caliber defense in college football, one of the best in the SEC. And I think he's just going to, as long as he stays healthy, the most important factor for him is staying healthy, which he's done so far in his career for the most part. I think Texas has two of the best defensive players, not only in the SEC, but in all of college football. Um, he was first team All American by The Athletic last season. I think that speaks to how specifically this publication views Anthony Hill, and I think he's going to repeat that this upcoming season. He was second team All American by a multitude of other publications. 113 tackles, fifth in the league. Led the SEC with 16 and a half tackles for loss and recorded 8 sacks. And he was playing hurt for like the last quarter of the year. So I don't think you can really argue Anthony Hill or Colin Simmons. Simmons is even more impressive because he's going into his sophomore year. And as a freshman, didn't start a single game. He played a lot, but he didn't start a single game. He tied for third in the SEC in tackles for loss and fifth in sacks with 9. 9 sacks as a true freshman, not even starting a single game. I think with Trey Moore opposite him this upcoming season, who I think is a player, we'll get to it, but not even having him as an honorable mention, I think is outrageous. But Simmons, the best pass rusher, along with Dylan Stewart in the SEC. We'll get to Stewart maybe a little later. He's also a little bit further down on this list. I think he has this season, after winning the Sean Alexander Award last year for the top freshman in the nation, I think Simmons has the potential to go for somewhere in the ballpark of 14 to 15 sacks this year if he's healthy. I don't think that's outrageous, or I think that's pretty realistic if he's healthy for the full season. And who knows, if Texas is playing in 15, 16 games, getting to the national championship, that number could potentially go even higher. Because I think he's legitimately a guy who could pretty easily get 2 to 3 sacks a game. Now, is that going to happen? Probably not, but he could have a game this. Is it totally outrageous that he has a game this year against UTEP where he has 4 sacks? No. So I think it's pretty realistic for those two players to be in the top 5. One of the reasons I really like this list from a Texas standpoint is they gave Michael Taft his damn respect, ranking him at number 14. He's the fourth player, the last player we haven't mentioned yet of the Texas group on this list. Second team All-American last year. Just a great story. Goes from, Westlake High School to a walk-on to an All-American, all in the span of 4 or 5 years. An incredible season last year. 78 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 12 pass deflections, and 2 interceptions. If he can just match that this year, he will be a guy that potentially goes in the first 2 days of the NFL draft, which is just amazing from where he started. I don't know if I was projecting. I'll say this: if I was projecting for the season that they're going to have this year, I would probably have Arch Manning ahead of Michael Taft. But I'm not mad at it because you have to give Taft the respect for what he's done. Arch Manning has yet to do that yet. We think he's going to do that or something similar to that or reach those heights, but we just don't have the sample size, which is why I believe Arch Manning is down at 16. Where I really have a problem with Manning is kind of where he's ranked in terms of the quarterbacks on this list, but we'll get to that once we get to the quarterback section of the conversation. So those are my thoughts on the Texas players on the list. Let's talk about Texas players not on the list. Emmy, who is the guy, or guys, plural, that you want to kind of come back at Mr. Manny Navarro at? Which players of the Longhorns were snubbed from this list?
Yeah, first guy that popped into my head that I mentioned that I alluded to in the intro was Trevor Gooseby. The sample size is not completely there, so I understand not wanting to put him in the top 25 right away, but I think not even mentioning them within a top 35 honorable mentions type of add in. I think that's a bit out there, just because what he showed in his time playing in the SEC championship game and in the big game in College Station. Not a lot of guys. Some of the guys even on this list could go into that environment and play as well as Trevor Gooseby did. On a, I think he played on a bum ankle too, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, everyone was kind
True.
of
But
banged up at that point in the
to
season.
put it simply,
Yeah, I mean, he was.
he showed off why you know he's looking to be a first round pick, possibly a top 10 pick next season. In the 300 some odd snaps that he played, he already put that high level tape on the field.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Like, I think if I'm projecting, and one of the reasons this list is kind of, there's some ambiguity to this list because he doesn't specify at the beginning whether or not this is what have you done for me lately or what are you going to do. It would have been a little bit more clear if he had kind of clarified that, like, what is his criteria for this. I think it's a combination of both. I think we can safely assume that since he didn't like say one or the other. But if I'm just projecting for this season, if Trevor Gooseby's healthy, I think he'll definitely make I think either first team or second team. To be safe, I'll say second team All SEC. I think that's fair because you have a guy like Caden Proctor, who I think could be a top 5 pick next year. Um, was a 5-star, highly recruited, one of the best offensive linemen in college football. He'll be he'll be playing on a monster offensive line, for Alabama this year. Already was second team All SEC as a junior. He's experienced, projected top 5 pick. I can understand him being first team, but I think Trevor Gooseby, if he carries out what we've seen in a small sample size over the entire season next year, he'll be safely on an all SEC team. And if you're on an all SEC team, no matter what team you're on, you deserve to be mentioned in the top 25 players of in the SEC. And if he has that kind of season, it's not out of the question that he is a round 1 pick next year if he goes. If not a round 1 pick, probably early day 2 pick. So I think it's pretty outrageous that he's not even mentioned in the honorable mentions. But to be fair to Manny Navarro, who wrote this article, I don't see too many um, offensive tackles outside of
Right.
Caden Proctor on the list in general. So it's not like he just ranked a bunch of offensive tackles in front of Trevor Gooseby. But regardless,
Yeah, and it's
I
an
disagree
incredibly
with that.
difficult list to make.
Um,
I'll ask you this though: if this list were to have gone to 50 players, which guys do you think would be absolute locks to be on the top 50 list?
outside of Trevor Gooseby, Trey Moore is the first one that comes to mind. Uh, Look, he didn't have the kind of season that maybe a lot of people thought he would last year when he came over from UTSA. Big step up in competition, obviously. Um, Coming off like a 14 and a half sack season. The nation's leader in sacks, I think, the year before he came to Texas. But in terms of just his impact on the game, in terms of tackles for loss, not so much sacks. I mean, he did get his fair share of sacks, but impact on the game from a tackles for loss standpoint, run defense, being in the right place at the right time, helping this Texas defense overall. I don't think there are 50 players in the SEC. I know for a fact, as talented as the SEC is, there aren't 50 players more impactful and better on the defensive, just in general, than Trey Moore. So I would definitely have Trey Moore, probably within the top 35 to 40 players. Um, I think that's probably pretty fair. And then I think Ryan Wingo
Yeah,
would have to be in the top 50. I
100%.
mean, let's just be honest here. Like, as a freshman last year, um, he he was really damn good. Had almost 600 yards receiving, made plays with the ball in his hands. Just a super explosive, really talented player who I think is going to be possibly the leading receiver for Texas this upcoming season. And then the last player I think there are a couple other players you might have to consider. Um, One is Manny Muhammad, the corner for Texas. But given some of his struggles towards the end of the season, I see why he's not mentioned here. The one I am interested in, um, let me think. Jack Andrews, the tight end that Texas brought in through the portal. He's viewed he's viewed as a top three, top two even returning tight end in college football. Had very similar production to Gunnar Helm last year at Cal. Um, with Arch Manning at quarterback, I think he could have a monstrous year. Similar to what Gunnar Helm had, and I think he could be drafted at a similar range to what Gunnar Helm was drafted. I think he could be top 50, but I understand like not knowing what exactly it's going to look like in this Texas offense. There could be some uncertainty there. But I think for sure, if we're just talking about top 25 conversation, you have to consider Trevor Gooseby. And I think you even have to consider Trey Moore and or Ryan Wingo, like in the top 35 to 40 range. So I don't know what happened to Emmy, but we'll continue. Those are kind of my thoughts on the Texas side of things from this list. But overall, like outside of Trevor Gooseby, no egregious omissions from the list. Like I think when you look at the rest of Texas's roster, specifically running back is an interesting one. Like Trey Wisner, good player, over 1,000 rushing yards, 12 touchdowns last year. But C.J. Baxter and Christian Clark are both coming off major injuries, so it's kind of hard to project like what the running back room exactly is going to look like. I don't think you can say right now that any of those running backs deserve to be on a top 25 list. But yeah, Trevor Gooseby, Ryan Wingo, Trey Moore, those are the guys that stand out as like missing from this list, but would definitely have to be in a top 50 for sure. Those would be the three guys that stand out to me as omissions. But if you extended the list out to top 50, they would definitely be on there. I guess as Emmy returns, can you hear me, Emmy? Okay.
Yeah.
He's
Can you hear
back.
me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Let's move on to the quarterback conversation that I wanted to have really fast. So when you look at this list, they ranked Lenoris Sellers the number one quarterback, the number one overall player in the SEC. And as far as quarterbacks goes, it goes Lenoris Sellers at 1. Garrett Nussmeier, the quarterback for LSU, is ranked number 7 on this list. And then you go down a little bit more. You get John Mateer, the Washington State transfer for Oklahoma, at number 13, the third quarterback on the list. Then you get Arch Manning, 16 on the list, the fourth quarterback mentioned. And the last quarterback mentioned is DJ Lagway, all the way down at 22. So, I mean, when you consider the 5 quarterbacks on this top 25 list and how they are ordered and ranked, does anything stand out to you? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? What are your thoughts?
Well, if I were to, in a vacuum, rank Arch Manning, Lenoris Sellers, and DJ Lagway, I don't know that I would have them in the order that he has them, if I'm being entirely honest. I think between Sellers and Manning, I think you're splitting hairs there. Those are two extremely talented players. And I definitely am not mad about, Sellers being ahead of Manning in that sense, especially given the, experience standpoint. And then Lagway, I think, would be very close behind as the third guy. So I feel comfortable with that. And then obviously he's very high on John Mateer as a transfer. He what he did at Washington State was very impressive. Whether he can, transition that over to the SEC is yet to be seen. But I mean, we've seen guys do that before. So I feel okay with this list. Like I'm okay with it, but I'm not like, jumping for joy that Arch Manning is all the way down at 16. That does feel a little bit low. If I were to just have a number pop into my head, what ranking would you give Arch Manning in terms of SEC players? I would probably throw out, something in the 8 to 12 range.
Yeah, I have no issue with Lenore Sellers at number one on this list. I mean, when you look at his body of work as a freshman, it's about as good as you can do. 2024 SEC Freshman of the Year, 13 All-Conference, 17th in passing efficiency, threw for 18 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. This is a guy who wasn't necessarily super highly recruited, but is immensely talented, and is projected by a lot of NFL draft, like early NFL draft projections, have him going in the top 10, even the top 5. If he has the kind of season, that I think he can have. Now, we're getting deeper into like rosters. We'll get deeper into like the teams in the SEC and how we project them to do over the next 4 or 5 weeks as we start to preview the season. I do have some questions about South Carolina's wide receiver core, just their overall weaponry on offense that they have around Lenore Sellers this year. They did lose a lot to the NFL draft. They've got talent, but it's a lot of younger players who haven't really proven themselves yet over the course of a full season. There are some concerns. Obviously, he had some issues with his ankle last year, some health issues. Hopefully, he can stay healthy. But if he's healthy, I think it's fair to have him at 1. In terms of who I would rank 2, right now, and this is nothing against Arch, I think Arch could quickly surpass everybody on this list. If he goes into Ohio State week 1 and he throws for over 300 yards, 3 or 4 touchdowns, looks like the future Heisman winner, and kind of kickstarts that campaign, he could easily be ranked 1, in a matter of weeks. But I think it's fair to give Garrett Nussmeier his respect as a fifth-year senior with all that playing experience. Last year as a guy that, was one of 2 SEC quarterbacks to throw for at least 4,000 yards. The one thing he has to clean up is the turnovers.
Yes.
12 interceptions last year. He threw some interceptions at key times. Some of those plays, I think, if you reverse the outcomes of those plays, could have changed the way we view LSU's season last year.
It could have
I hesitate to say
pushed him into
3 or 4
declaring for the draft as well. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. He's got to clean up some of the turnovers, but a lot of people project him along with Arch to be one of the leaders for the Heisman, and I think he's going to have a pretty damn good season because I think what LSU did in the portal, I think they may have signed the top transfer portal class. They brought in some really, really talented weapons for him. If he can clean up those turnovers, I have no problem with him being, at least right now, number 2, just because there's much more of a sample size there. And he's been a warrior. He hasn't gotten hurt very much either. So I'm fine with that. But I would have Arch 3. I would actually have Arch 3 ahead of John Mateer and ahead of DJ Lagway. Just because Mateer, although he was great at Washington State, I have concerns about Oklahoma. their roster, his overall surroundings, their schedule, the season he's going to have going up against SEC competition. I just have some concerns there. I still think he could be really good. I think he'll be a much needed upgrade for them in that particular setting with his offensive coordinator that they're bringing with him to Oklahoma. I think he'll be better in Oklahoma's system than Jackson Arnold was last year, which will probably make Oklahoma much more viable. Not as necessarily a college football playoff contender, but like they'll be much better offensively than they were last year. Much more viable, much more of a threat offensively. Like in that Texas game last year, they couldn't complete a forward pass. I mean, it was just ridiculous how bad it was last year. I still think I'd rank Arch ahead of him because I'm projecting. But I like for me, and this is how we'll finish this. I would quibble with DJ Lagway and John Mateer 4A, 4B. I might put DJ Lagway a little ahead of him just because I know Lagway has already thrived at this level against this competition. But the one concern I have with Lagway is obviously like he's made of glass. I hate to say it, but so far in his career, yikes, it hasn't been pretty with the injuries. He's immensely talented. Like he's just as talented as Arch Manning. He's just as talented as Lenora Sellers, but has not been pretty from a health standpoint. I think a lot about what that Florida game was last year changes the way Florida played the second half of the season if Lagway was healthy in that Texas game, but he wasn't.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
those are my thoughts on the quarterbacks. Anything else you want to add there?
Well, the good news for Lagway is he'll be in front of a very good offensive line come next year. So that's the good news.
Yeah, you just hope he could stay healthy because if you've got Arch Manning, Norris Sellers, DJ Lagway, John Mateer, Garrett Nussmeier, even a guy like Diego Pavia,
even Gunnar
Stockton,
Stockton,
like all these younger Gunnar Stockton, like all these younger quarterbacks within the SEC, it's going to be really exciting to watch this upcoming season. In terms of everything else that has to do, well, actually, let's do an exercise real fast. Let's quickly go through like the top 10 to 15 players and say first round pick this upcoming year or not. Okay? Because I want to just get a gauge of like how many first round picks are on this list. Lenora Sellers, I would say yes. Would you agree?
I mean, I think yes, but I'm more 75-25 because I think there is a chance at regression there in terms of like he's not going to be sneaking up on anybody. There's a year of tape on him this time around, facing the same opponents
well,
again.
I'm gonna go.
But I'm gonna say yes.
I'm gonna go yes. Anthony Hill.
Yes.
Yes, I agree. Caden Proctor definitely. So that's 3. Colin Simmons won't be eligible, so we'll skip him.
Yeah.
Ryan Williams won't be eligible. Don't know much about Keldrick Falk. Let's see. He was a 20 starts. He's a junior, 2 seasons at Auburn, so he will be eligible. Garnering NFL draft buzz. 11 tackles for loss, 7 sacks last year. I'll say yes on him from the little I know. Garrett Nussmeier. Do you disagree?
No, I'm not gonna disagree. I think this next class is gonna be pretty quarterback heavy.
Garrett Nussmeier, do you think he's a potential first round pick?
Yeah, I'll say yes.
Okay. Well, that's about 5. Dylan Stort. What year is Dylan Stort? I don't know if he will be eligible. Let's see. I don't think Jake Slaughter, even though he's one of the best offensive linemen in the SEC, I don't know that he'll be first round pick good or worthy.
Yeah.
Whit Weeks probably not.
Position flexibility for him to raise his stock.
LT Overton definitely. Yeah, LT Overton definitely.
For sure.
I don't know much about Kristen Miller, defensive lineman from Georgia, but I'm never going to doubt that a defensive lineman from Georgia could go in the first round. Maybe. We'll say maybe on that one. I don't know much about him. Mateer, I don't think so. Taft, no. Cam Coleman's not yet eligible. Arch Manning, I don't think will go. So, I mean, a lot of these guys on this list might not even go to the... Like, a lot of them are younger players, which is really exciting. I just wanted to kind of get a gauge on that. But in terms of, like, the honorable mentions, do we see any potential first-round picks in the honorable mentions? I don't know. Like, for the future, I think if Zachariah Branch has a monster year, he's got the talent to be a first-round pick. Same with Harold Perkins Jr. at LSU. But they've yet to kind of find, like, the right position for him. He's been going between outside linebacker and off-ball linebacker. They're moving him all around, trying to find that right mix for him. But those two players definitely have first-round talent. Caden Green's really good offensive lineman at Missouri. He could potentially...
Yeah, I was just about to say him. Like, he played on the same side of the line as Membu last year.
Mm-hmm. Those would be three guys that potentially... I don't know all these guys' eligibility, but I know for sure Perkins will be eligible, and I think Branch will, but I'm not entirely sure. Okay. Well, is there anything else that you want to get off your chest in terms of this list? Any other players that you wanted to mention or conversations you wanted to have?
Well, I'll just finish this segment by saying, it's easy to say all this stuff in June, but it's like it's so hard to make a list like this. So I'll just give the guy credit just for putting it out there, putting his opinion out there to be dissected. Because everybody's going to want to come back to this list, come 6 months' time when the season comes to an end and be like, oh, like, this guy sucked this year, blah, blah, blah. Like,
yeah, I agree, but it's the content space. You got to put content out there, and these lists get the clicks. And I think, like, if you look at his top 10, I think, like, okay, we can come back to this list in December and say, well, Arch Manning was a first-team All-American. He won the Heisman. He was way too low. Yeah, okay. That I understand. But, like, if you're going to quibble over John Mateer being way too high or, someone down in the 20s, like, I understand if maybe, like, if DJ Lagway has a monster year, why was he ranked 22? Like, those kinds of things I understand. But, like, if you look at most of his top 10, I think there's very little bust potential unless some of these players get hurt with a lot of these players. Like Anthony Hill, Hayden Proctor, Colin Simmons, Ryan Williams, Garrett Nussmeier, Dylan Stewart. Like, all these guys, I think, are still going to be really, really good. You're going to see a lot of these guys in the top 10 on all SEC teams. And so I don't know how much quibbling I'll be doing, but there'll certainly be those conversations because we know not every fan is short for fanatic. And so you could definitely see, like, some Auburn fan in December coming back to this and saying, why the fuck was Cam Coleman 15? Which I understand. Like, I think Cam Coleman's too low, actually.
Yeah, that's one that I thought of as well.
I'm not going to get into that right now. Well, that was a fun, really fruitful conversation to kick off kind of our college football previews. They did another one of these lists for the ACC. I'm not sure they've done one for the Big Ten. If that comes out sometime soon, we'll maybe react to that. The Athletic has a bunch of other like top 25 college football lists, like top college football programs of the 2000s. Might be some content for down the line, but a lot of our college football content over the next 2 months until the season officially gets started on August 30th is going to be team preview content, Texas preview content, and recruiting. That'll be the bulk of our shows here on out. So it should be a lot of fun. I really enjoy this time of year. as we get closer and closer to the season. But we're actually going to transition now into our baseball segment to finish out this episode. Emmy's going to be moderating. He'll chip in opinions where he thinks he wants to, but we've got a couple of baseball questions that I want to get into today. We kind of started out by introducing some of these transfers and some of these roster moves that have been happening last episode, but we're going to continue that conversation here today. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it.
Yeah, let's do it. So first things first, the first question you have listed here, will most of Texas's 2025 high school recruiting class make it to campus?
Yeah, so the reason I want to talk about this, and the reason it's important for this year's team, is Schlossnagel, Nolan Kane, Troy Tulowitzki, this entire Texas baseball staff. One of the reasons they were hired is not only their track record, right, of taking teams to the College World Series, at every location they've been at, whether it's TCU or Texas A&M, the main ones, and not just their overall baseball knowledge and coaching ability, but they were hired because it felt like under David Pierce, Texas wasn't getting the high-level talent that it needed to compete at the highest level of college baseball, whether that be through the transfer portal, where he did not do a very good job at all, or through recruiting, high school recruiting. Nolan Kane, Schlossnagel and company have done a very good job recruiting, both obviously in the portal, as they're doing now, but specifically on the high school side. But one of the risks that you run in baseball, one of the reasons it's different than, say, basketball or football, is where the draft is, where the MLB draft is placed in the sports calendar. And, in baseball, these high school players, if they're really freaking good, they can choose to sign with an MLB team if they like where they're drafted over going to school. They can sign with an MLB team right out of high school and go to the draft. They don't have to necessarily go to campus. Now, in the world of NIL today, it makes it a little more difficult of a decision. If you're drafted in the first round and you're going to make, say, 600, 700K, playing in the minors, but say you get more from, where you sign, or where you commit to, whether that's Texas or LSU, say LSU gives you more money, you might want to go to school. But for some of these players, they just want to go straight to, they don't want to waste much time. They want to get their clock started and try to get to the big leagues as quickly as possible, which I understand. Texas currently has the number 2 ranked recruiting class for this season, the 2025 recruiting class. And they have the number 1 ranked recruiting class next year by a long shot. It's not even close. But one of the risks that you run with getting so much talent is that some of these players are risks to go in the first round and sign with an MLB team. They might not ever make it to campus. The draft is in a couple weeks. I think most, 80 to 85%, to answer the question, going to make it to campus. I feel good about a lot of these players. We're not going to go into every single player. There are a couple high-level talents that are projected first round. One of them, Kason Cunningham, who's a big-time shortstop, from the state of Texas, projected to go in the top 10 picks. He's not coming to campus. If you're drafted in the top 10, forget about it. And then there's another guy, Gavin Feen, who is projected later on in the first round, maybe in the second round. I don't think those two guys are going to make it, unfortunately. But because it's so good and so deep of a recruiting class, I think most of the other players are going to make it. The reason it's important is look at last year. Look at this past year. Where would Texas have been without a lot of the contributions of the freshmen on the team? Adrian Rodriguez, for example. Dylan Volantis, for example. Jonah Williams, for example. I mean, the list goes on and on. So getting those guys, getting all that talent to campus to develop over the next couple years to keep the talent pipeline going, along with kind of the holes that they're filling in the transfer portal, unbelievable. So there's a lot to be excited about on the high school side. I know there's a ton to be excited about when it comes to the portal, but on the high school side, like, very, very important. Like Dylan Volantis and Adrian Rodriguez are two guys that did make it to campus out of high school. And look what they did this past year. So, 80 to 85% of that class, I think, will safely make it.
I mean, that's good to hear. My thoughts on it, real quick, is just like, as someone that at a certain point in my life, thought about pursuing professional golf, I know that grinding on like whatever your, lower level in your sport is. For golf, it's the mini tours. For baseball, it's the minor leagues. That life is a absolute grind. And I think the good news for Texas is when you're recruiting these guys, you get to bring them to Austin and they get to, pursue their education and like they don't have to, deal with all the they get the NIL money without having to deal with all of the just absolute like exhaustion and like feelings of burnout that a lot of these athletes in the minors of these sports face.
Case Cunningham, though, is the big name. If you're going to tune in to some of the MLB draft or follow what's going on because you want to see maybe where Max Ballou goes or where Jared Spencer goes, stuff like that. Case Cunningham will be the first player off the board. He's a Texas commit, Texas signee, but he'll end up signing in the draft. He's, hitting 445 in high school. He's one of the best bats in the entire country, 19 years old, from the San Antonio area. Just incredible. It'd be really cool to get that guy on campus, but unfortunately that's not going to happen. But there's a ton of other talent in the class, particularly on the pitching side, that I really, really like. Maybe we'll get into that down the line when it gets closer to baseball season, but not right now. What's our next question?
Yeah, the next question is going to be, how would you evaluate Dylan Volantis' freshman campaign?
Let's see, we've got about 10 minutes left. This will be fast. A plus 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 is the simple answer. Look, this dude was incredible. Now, early on in the season, once he got to campus to start out this past year, the staff was trying to figure out, okay, do we want this guy to try to be a starter, or do we want him in our bullpen? And very quickly they realized he can eventually become a starter. He's got the stuff, the mental makeup, and everything that you need to eventually become a really effective starter in the SEC and potentially in the big leagues with his size and, overall pitching acumen and sequencing and all that stuff, especially being developed by a guy like Max Weiner to amplify all those things. Very quickly they realized, no, we want this guy to be our closer as a freshman in the SEC. And what did he do? If I pull up the stats, he set a record, an SEC record for saves in a season. He got a 1.94 ERA, 74 strikeouts to 12 walks, over 51 innings, and he was National Freshman of the Year. That's all you really need to say for Dylan Volantis. He was just named the 2025 College Baseball Freshman of the Year by both Baseball America and D1 Baseball, the two major college baseball publications that exist. Just incredible. And he puts his name into Texas history with some very, very well-known names that have also accomplished the same feat. But, when you just look at him, his delivery, his release, give him rare traits. At 6'6", those pitches get on you quickly. He's got really good stuff, excellent depth. He's being developed under Max Weiner. And he had one of the best closer seasons ever in SEC history. And so In terms of like what this year holds for him, I think he's going to transition into being a really effective all SEC caliber starter for the Horns this year. Whether or not he's the Friday guy or Saturday guy or Sunday guy is too early to really tell. Texas is anticipating not Jared Spencer, Luke Harrison, and Ruger Riojas back. So it could be some combination of those three guys as their weekend rotation. But, I mean, Volantis has it all. It was an A++ season for him. So we'll kind of over the next couple months, we'll do some season and review segments like, okay, how would we grade Adrian Rodriguez this season, or how would we grade Luke Harrison's season? Just as kind of a fun reflection on the season. That's my thoughts on Mr. Dylan Volantis. I think he was, I'll put it this way, I think he was a top 10, if you were to rank the top 10 athletes on campus in terms of what they accomplished over the course of the 2024-2025 athletic year that just finished, he would have to be in the conversation of top 10 in terms of like on the 40 acres. What he
Absolutely.
accomplished.
Yeah. I mean, if you're ranking the best like pitching seasons at Texas over this century, he's probably top 5.
Yeah, and I think, look, Texas is doing a lot of good stuff in the portal. They're going to be bringing back some really good players to next year's team, players that have already done it in the SEC. But if I had to tell you, like, here's the guy, here's the face of Texas baseball over the next couple of years, it's Dylan Volantis. I don't know that we have time for the last question. And to be honest with you, I don't really have anything prepared. The question is going to be, what is your way too early lineup projection as of today with the transfers that they've brought in and kind of the returning talent? We're not going to make a lineup, but what we can really quickly do is just go through the positions and really quickly like project who I think is going to start there as of today. And this is way too early, but we'll do it anyway. It's kind of a fun segment. So here's how I would do it. And there are going to be one or two guys that unfortunately don't make the starting lineup that are really talented because Texas has so many good position players. But that's okay. That's a good problem to have. Catcher's going to be Carson Tenney, who they brought in from Notre Dame. He'll potentially be a top 10 pick in the draft next year. We'll get more into like his profile as a player, but he'll be the starting catcher. When you look at third base, it'll be Adrian Rodriguez. I think he'll continue to play there. Texas will, I think, look at him maybe in the outfield or maybe at second base. They might move him around some, but I think his main position will end up being third base. Shortstop's going to be Timo Becerra. They're losing Jalen Flores most likely to the draft. So unless he comes back, Timo Becerra is just a really solid glove and contact bat that they bring in from Stanford. He'll start at shortstop. Second base, I think will be Caleb Freeman, who's got a lot of versatility. He's a player they brought in from Georgia State. Was actually first team All-American by D1 Baseball this year, but he's played the outfield too. Good, but I think he'll find his like home at second base. It's way too early, but what the hell.
That's already 3 newcomers starting in the infield.
Yep. But, they had a lot to replace there. At first base, you're replacing Kimball Schuessler. It'll be I'll say this. It's going to be a battle between Josh Livingston, who's a power bat from Wichita State, the first transfer committed of this cycle for the Horns, or Casey Borba, who's one of their returning players. Played really good down the stretch last year. Played first base and third base. Pick a guy. I think Casey Borba has the inherent advantage because he's a returning player. So I'll just say it's Casey Borba at first. In the outfield, I think it's pretty easy. I have Aiden Robbins, one of the top players they got in this portal haul, from Seton Hall, Big East Player of the Year. Just really, really freaking good. Hit over 400 last season. He'll play center. Jack Maroknek, another outfielder that they got. Switch hitter, lefty bat, power bat. I think he'll replace Max Ballou in right. So you'll have Maroknek in right to replace Max Ballou. You'll have Aiden Robbins in center to replace Will Gasparino. And then as long as nothing happens to Jonah Williams and he stays healthy through the football season, you'll have Jonah Williams in left. And then you'll have some really talented players on the bench. I don't know how that will be ordered in a batting lineup per se, but I think that gives you a pretty good idea of where things stand right.
Yeah, and I think Livingstone, whether he gets that first base spot or not, I feel pretty confident that he'll have some type of role as a DH.
Oh yeah, I forgot DH. Yeah, I mean, I think it'll probably be Borba at first and Livingston as a DH. I think that makes more sense than Borba as a DH and Livingston at first. But they can do both. That's the versatility that they have by bringing in all of these talented players that they've brought in so far.
Yeah, one question I have for you in terms of this transfer class, like how would you grade their, I guess, overall speed as a group, like in terms of base running, stealing bases, that kind of stuff?
That's a great question. I mean, I think there's enough. Robbins is a guy who's really athletic. He can run. We've already seen it from a guy like Adrian Rodriguez, Jonah Williams. There's going to be some legitimate speed in this lineup. I can't give you like a definitive answer, but B plus, like definitely solid at the very least. So I think one of the things Texas is trying to do, just speaking from a general standpoint, is they're trying to become more balanced as a lineup. One of the things David Pierce did not do a really good job of is recruiting balance within the lineup. A lot of the players that were retained from the last year of David Pierce, it was a right-handed heavy lineup. One of the things Texas is doing is they're bringing in more lefty bats to balance that out so that there aren't like lanes within a lineup that you can just mow down as an opposing team with certain pitchers. They're trying to become more balanced, and that's what they're doing. They've brought in a couple switch hitters in the portal. They've got some good left-handed bats, and they're kind of doing the same thing in the bullpen. Like they've added 3 really good left-handed bullpen arms. They didn't have a lot of like effective lefties outside of Dylan Volantis last year in the bullpen. So, well, again, like over the next couple months, we'll definitely be doing some player profiles on these specific players, but we don't have time for that today. Next week, recruiting class prediction. You will hold us to the fire. It'll be our official prediction of this recruiting class. Who's going to sign on the dotted line in December? If we suck, you can throw it back in our face, particularly my face. But if we're good, I'm going to let you know about it. So that'll be a fun segment, and then we'll try to squeeze in a little preview segment or two. Maybe we'll start previewing teams. I don't know what we're going to do specifically yet. Maybe we'll react to another list. Maybe we'll make our own list, something along those lines. But we'll be doing something college football related. Maybe we just talk about the state of not only college football, but college athletics. Because holy shit, a lot has happened over the last couple weeks that we haven't even talked about yet.
Yeah, definitely.
Revenue sharing, all of that stuff. It's a mess, but we could talk about it. It's a possibility. Any parting shots?
I think the parting shot for today is this is going to be this will be the last big baseball segment for a little while. Like it's going to be very football heavy, as you said, starting from now. as we hit July, it's going to be football. So
preview segments galore, football segments galore, recruiting segments galore. All pretty much, I'd say like 90-95%, the very least. That's on the low end football conversation on Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports from here all the way until the season starts. Now, during the season, like during bye weeks and stuff, we could mix in some basketball, we could mix in some baseball, but as Emmy said, like he's right. It's going to be mostly football. And same thing on Rob Prospect Football Podcast, of course. We did an NBA episode last week because it was kind of a dead time, but from this week on, football. It's 10 weeks until the NFL season. So, I mean, we've got to do it. We probably should start our yearly top 20 power rankings that we do. Because if we did 2 teams a week starting next week, I think we would finish it. So we'll talk about it off air. That's not a conversation for right now, but it'll be something along those lines. So with that being said, it's Sunday evening. Emmy and I both have to probably go eat dinner. We'll have Raw Prospect Football Podcast out to you guys. One other thing, I don't think I've gotten the last week's Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports out. It's going to be up tonight. I've been really busy moving and stuff, but that's going to be out tonight or at the very latest tomorrow morning, Monday morning. And then this episode you'll likely be viewing next week, Friday or Saturday. But we'll have another, if you really enjoyed our Make Your Case episodes, we've got another one of those coming as well. So we'll see you guys then. Hook 'em. There's a lot to be excited about. And we'll see you next time here on Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports. For Michael, he's Emmy Nixon. We're out. Peace.